The impossible signal. Observation deck of Harmony's Edge, armed with the quiet efficiency of a dozen different species working in synchronized harmony. Dr. Maya. Chen pressed her palm against the transparent aluminum viewport, her breath fogging the surface as she stared into the infinite darkness beyond. Somewhere out there, in a star system declared dead 3 centuries ago, something was calling. You're wasting computational resources again. Human. The clicking voice of Commander Velkrin echoed through her translation implant. The insectoid officer's compound eyes reflected the holographic displays floating around the command center, each one showing nothing but cosmic static from Sector 7-7-9. Maya didn't turn around. She'd learned in her 2 years aboard the station that Velkrin's species. The Velkrin communicated disapproval through posture as much as words. I'm not wasting anything, Commander. I'm listening. Listening to emptiness. Velkrin's mandibles clicked in what Maya had learned to interpret as dismissive amusement. The Korath system died when its star collapsed into a black dwarf. Our sensors detect nothing. The Thorum engineers detect nothing. Even the Azari, with their quantum probability arrays, detect nothing. Yet you, with your primitive auditory processing, claim to hear something. Maya finally turned, meeting the commander's multifaceted gaze with steady brown eyes. That's exactly why I can hear it. Your sensors are looking for what they expect to find. You're so advanced that you've forgotten how to recognize the impossible. The command center fell silent. A Thorum engineer, its crystalline body refracting the blue light of the displays, rotated several of its sensory organs toward her. Even Colossal, the Azari mathematician whose species calculated probability streams in their sleep, paused her work. Explain, Velkrin commanded, his tone shifting from dismissive to curious. That was the thing about the Velkrin. They were strategic thinkers above all else. If Maya could present a logical argument, he would listen. Maya pulled up the audio file she'd been analyzing for 3 weeks. To anyone else, it was white noise, the background radiation of a dead system. But she'd spent countless hours staring at the waveform, looking for patterns the way her ancestors had looked for animals and cloud formations. There, every 47 minutes and 16 seconds, a pause. Just 3 milliseconds, but it's there. Your sensors filter it out as insignificant variation. Because it is insignificant, Kalessa interjected, her melodic voice carrying the mathematical certainty her species was famous for. The probability of that being an intentional signal versus random cosmic fluctuation is 0.003%. But it's not zero, Maya pressed. Humans have a saying, when you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. But sometimes it really is zebras. And sometimes, she'll let the pause hang, sometimes it's something you don't have a name for yet. Velkrin's antennae twitched. Maya had learned this meant he was processing, calculating, running scenarios through his strategic combat-trained mind. Even if you're correct, which violates 17 different probability models, what would you have us do? The Galactic Council has not authorized exploration of dead systems. Resources are allocated based on strategic value. The strategic value is the unknown, Maya argued, her voice rising with passion. Every species here thinks they understand the universe because you've mapped it, calculated it, predicted it. But my species is young. We still remember when we thought the Earth was flat, when we thought the stars were holes in a celestial sphere. We've been wrong so many times that we've learned to question everything. That's our strength. We look for what doesn't fit, the Thorum engineer chimed in, its voice like resonating crystal. The human makes a philosophical point. But philosophy does not justify the fuel expenditure for a 3-day journey into a dead system. Maya felt frustration building in her chest. She'd been so certain, had spent so many sleepless nights running the pattern through every analysis tool she could access. But how did you convince species that had mastered logic to take a leap of faith? Then it hit her. You didn't convince them with faith. You convinced them with what they valued most. Commander Velkrin, she said, her voice calm and measured now. Your species built an empire on strategic advantage, on knowing what your enemies would do before they did it. If I'm right, we'll be first to whatever's in that system. If I'm wrong, you lose 3 days and gain proof that human intuition is unreliable, which is valuable intelligence for future joint operations. Velcrin's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. You're learning to think like a Velcrin, Dr. Chen. Very well. We depart in 1 hour. But if we find nothing, you will personally explain to the Council why we deviated from our assigned patrol route. Deal, Maya said, trying to keep the tremor of excitement from her voice. 3 days later, as their scout ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Korath system, every sensor array on the bridge erupted with alerts. Maya gripped her chair as the view screen cleared to reveal something that should not exist. A megastructure, vast beyond comprehension, wrapped around the dead star like a mechanical shell. And it was dying. Great sections of it flickered and went dark, as if something was consuming it from within, swallowing light itself. Impossible, Kalisa whispered, her probability calculation abilities momentarily overwhelmed. Maya leaned forward, her heart pounding. No, she said softly, just improbable. And that's very, very different. Asterisk the human solution, the bridge of their scout ship trembled as they passed through the outer shell of the megastructure. Maya watched her instruments flicker and die one by one, as if the darkness outside was hungry for their light. Through the view screen, corridors stretched into impossible distances, their walls covered in symbols from a civilization that predated the Galactic Council by millennia. This is a tomb, Velcrin said, his antennae flat against his carapace in what Maya had learned meant fear. We should not be here. It's a message, Maya corrected, her fingers dancing across her backup consolda, only one still functioning. The others had switched to purely mechanical controls, something most species hadn't needed in centuries. Thank God for human paranoia and backup systems. Look at the walls. Those aren't random patterns. It's a warning. Kalesa's voice came through the CUM system, strained and mathematical as always, but with an edge of panic Maya had never heard before. I'm detecting massive energy consumption in the core sectors. Something is draining power at a rate that shouldn't be possible. Whatever it is, it's accelerating. The Thorum engineer, whose name translated roughly to resonance, had gone completely dark, its crystalline body clouded with stress. My sensors detect nothing. No life signs, no technology, no mass. But energy is disappearing. This violates the fundamental laws of thermodynamics. Unless, Maya said slowly, her mind racing through possibilities, whatever's consuming the energy doesn't follow our laws. Velcrin, in your species' military history, have you ever encountered an enemy you couldn't predict? Once the commander replied, his mandibles clicking nervously. The Wraith Wars 12,000 years ago. An enemy that appeared from nowhere, struck without pattern, disappeared without trace. We lost 17 colony worlds before they vanished as mysteriously as they arrived. Our strategists called them the Void, a designation for something that defied all tactical analysis. Maya felt ice run down her spine. I think we just found out where they went. As if responding to her words, the corridor ahead erupted in darkness. Not the simple absence of light, but something deeper, a darkness that seemed to swallow the very concept of illumination. It moved with purpose, flowing along the walls like liquid shadow, and where it touched the ancient metal, the structure simply ceased to exist. Evasive action. Velcrin commanded, but the pilot, a young Azari named Finsol, was frozen at his controls. His probability calculating mind locked in an endless loop trying to process something that shouldn't exist. Maya didn't think. She threw herself at the manual override. Her human reflexes, born from a species that had learned to drive vehicles at lethal speeds for entertainment. The ship lurched sideways, scraping against the corridor wall with a sound that made everyone wince. The darkness missed them by meters. They're not monsters, Maya said, her breath coming fast as she wrestled with the controls. They're opportunists. Energy parasites. They found this structure, this incredible power source, and they've been feeding ever since. That's what killed the civilization that built this place. How does understanding them help us? Kalesa demanded. My calculations show 17,000 possible escape routes, and every single one terminates in our destruction. The probability of survival is— Don't tell me the odds, Maya interrupted. And despite the terror of their situation, she felt a wild grin spreading across her face. That's the most human thing I've ever said, and it's exactly what we need right now. Your species are brilliant because you can calculate probability. Mine is crazy because we've spent our entire history defying it. She pulled up the schematic of the megastructure, her mind working through a problem that her crewmates' logical brains wouldn't even consider. Velcrin, in warfare, what do you do when you can't fight an enemy directly? The commander's antennae perked up slightly. You attack their supply lines. You turn their strengths into weaknesses. He paused, his strategic mind beginning to see what Maya was suggesting. You make them defeat themselves. Exactly. Maya's fingers flew across the console, pulling up energy readings from throughout the structure. These things consume energy. It's what they are. But what happens when a predator eats too much, too fast? It becomes sluggish, Velcrin said, his mandibles spreading. Vulnerable. Or it explodes, Resonance added, its crystalline body beginning to glow with understanding. If we could trigger a massive energy release, concentrate all remaining power in the structure into a single point, they'd converge on it like sharks to blood, Maya finished. We set a trap using their own hunger. Then we collapse it. Kalesa's voice was shaking, but no longer with fear. The mathematics are insane. We'd have to calculate the exact moment of collapse, navigate through 17 kilometers of hostile structure, and reach the escape threshold before everything goes boom, Maya said. Yeah, that's the plan. That's not a plan. That's a prayer, Kalesa protested. Maya turned to look at her alien crewmates, seeing fear in every one of them, but also something else's spark of desperate hope. My species has a lot of prayers. And sometimes, when the math says you're dead, faith is all you've got left. But we also have something else. We're really, really good at improvising. Velcrin stood from his command chair, his entire posture shifting from defensive to offensive. Dr. Chen, you are either the bravest or most foolish being I've ever encountered. But I've learned that with humans, those traits are often the same thing. We'll follow your plan. One problem, Finzal said, his voice small. Even if the plan works, we only have one escape pod. The ship will never survive the energy surge. That means only 3 of us can evacuate. There are 5 of us here. The bridge fell silent as the reality sank in. Maya looked at each of her crewmates' beings from worlds she'd never even heard of 3 years ago, who'd become closer than family. She opened her mouth to speak, to volunteer for what they all knew had to happen, but Velcrin's mandibles clicked once, sharp and final. No. We decide after we execute the plan. First, we survive. Then, we calculate the cost. That's the strategic approach. Maya nodded, swallowing the fear in her throat. Then let's give these Void Eaters something to choke on. As they raced deeper into the megastructure, toward its ancient power core. Maya couldn't help but think that humanity's greatest export to the galaxy wasn't technology or art. It was the sheer, stubborn refusal to accept that some problems didn't have solutions. Even when the universe itself disagreed. Humanity's gift, the power core of the ancient megastructure pulsed with dying light, a heart that had beaten for millions of years, now stuttering toward its final rest. Maya's hands moved across the manual controls, overriding safety protocols that civilizations far older than humanity had built into the system. Around her, the Void Eaters gathered like storm clouds. Drawn by the energy signature she was deliberately amplifying, 30 seconds until critical mass, Kalesa announced, her mathematical mind providing the countdown even as her voice trembled. Maya, if you're going to trigger the containment collapse, it has to be now. Maya glanced at the escape pod visible through the core chamber's observation window. Velcrin, Resonance, and Finzal were already inside. Kalesa stood at the chamber door, refusing to leave until Maya did. But they both knew the truth. Someone had to stay to manually redirect the power surge to ensure the trap closed at precisely the right microsecond. Automated systems couldn't adapt if something went wrong. This required human intuition, human timing, human sacrifice. Kalesa, Maya said quietly. Your people need you. Your family needs you. And the galaxy needs humans who remind us that logic isn't the only path to wisdom, colossal replied, stepping back into the chamber. The door began to close between them. Maya, I've spent my entire life calculating probabilities. Do you know what the probability was of humanity joining the Galactic Council when you were first discovered? 0.0-0-2%. You were too violent, too chaotic, too unpredictable. And yet here you are, teaching us how to survive the impossible. The door sealed with a hiss of pressurization. Maya turned back to the controls, blinking away tears she couldn't afford right now. The energy readings were spiking. The Void Eaters were converging, drawn by the promise of a feast unlike anything they'd consumed before. She could see them on the sensors, or rather, she could see the absence they created holes in reality itself. Hungry and ancient and unstoppable. Her fingers hovered over the final sequence. Once she triggered it, the containment field would collapse inward, trapping the Void Eaters in a sphere of compressed energy that would then explode outward, hopefully destroying them while propelling the escape pod beyond the blast radius. The timing had to be perfect. Too early, and the Void Eaters would escape. Too late, and the pod wouldn't clear the explosion. 20 seconds. Maya closed her eyes. Thinking of Earth, of her mother's garden in Beijing, where she'd spent childhood. Afternoons watching clouds and dreaming of stars. Of her first day at the academy, when they told her humans weren't smart enough for deep space research. Of every impossible thing humanity had achieved simply because no one had properly explained to them that it couldn't be done. 15 seconds, her hand moved toward the control, then stopped. Through the chamber window, she saw Velcrin's face pressed against the escape pod viewport. His mandibles were moving frantically. The pod's door was opening again. No, Maya whispered. No, what are you doing? Her cum crackled to life. Calculating a new solution? Kalus's voice came through, calm despite the chaos. You taught us something, Maya. You taught us that impossible just means no one solved it yet. The escape pod door fully opened and all 4 of her crewmates emerged, racing back toward the core chamber. Maya's mind reeled. They were insane. They were going to die. They were going to pilot the structure itself, Velcrin announced as they burst back into the chamber. You said improvise, human. So we improvise. The structure is falling apart. Maya protested. The Void Eaters have consumed half the control systems, but not the propulsion systems. Resonance interrupted, its crystalline body now glowing brilliant blue with determination. The ancients who built this place, they made it mobile. A generation ship, designed to travel between galaxies. The engines are damaged, but my people interface directly with crystalline technology. I can restore enough function for one burst. Finsol was already at a secondary console, his probability calculating mind working faster than Maya had ever seen. If we angle the explosion, use it as thrust instead of trying to escape it, we can ride the shockwave. The odds are a terrible 8% survival probability, but it's better than 0. 8%, Maya laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. My species has done crazier things with worse odds, but we'll never make it all together. The structure's mass, the energy requirements, which is why we're jettisoning everything. Velcrin cut in, his strategic mind already 3 steps ahead. Outer shells, unnecessary compartments, everything but this core section. We make ourselves light enough to move, fast enough to survive. 10 seconds. Maya looked at her crew. These alien beings who had every logical reason to save themselves, who had been trained by their civilizations to calculate optimal survival strategies. And they were choosing to stay. To bet everything on a plan that no sane species would attempt. You're all insane, she said. We learn from the best, Colossal replied. Taking position at the navigation console. 5 seconds. Resonance engine interface now, Velcrin commanded. The Thorum engineer placed all 6 of its appendages against the ancient control surfaces. Its body blazed with light as it connected directly to technology older than most stars. Engine systems responding. 30% power 40. That'll have to be enough, Maya said, her hands flying across the containment controls. Everyone hold on to something. This is going to be... She triggered the collapse. Reality screamed. The containment field inverted, trapping the Void Eaters in a sphere of compressed energy that grew smaller, denser, more impossible with each microsecond. Maya could see them trying to escape, these ancient predators suddenly finding themselves prey. The energy density exceeded anything the universe should allow.
Ow.
Velcrin roared. Resonance channeled everything into the engines. The megastructure shuddered, groaned, and then moved, propelled by an explosion that could have vaporized a moon. They rode the shockwave like surfers on a tsunami. The core section of the structure, tearing free from the dying shell, everything non-essential burning away in the cosmic fire behind them. Maya watched through the viewport as the megastructure collapsed inward, taking the Void Eaters with it. For just a moment, she saw them clearly in twos of pure darkness, ancient and terrible, and beautiful in their own way. Before they were consumed by the very energy they'd sought to devour, the shock wave hurled them forward. Faster than any ship should move without a faster-than-light drive. Through the viewport, stars streaked past in lines of light. Alarms blared. Systems failed. The structure shook itself apart, piece by piece. And then, as suddenly as it began, they were through. Coasting in normal space, the wreckage of the megastructure a dying star behind them. For a long moment, no one spoke. They simply breathed, alive against all probability. Finally, Finsal broke the silence. We survived. The probability was 8%, and we survived. No, Kalesa said softly, looking at Maya with something like wonder. The probability was 100%. Because we had a human with us. 3 months later, Maya stood before the Galactic Council, the ruling body of 200 species, and watched them debate humanity's role in the greater galaxy. The destruction of the Void Eaters and the discovery of the ancient megastructure had sent shockwaves through every civilization. Some called for caution regarding humanity's reckless methods. Others argued for humanity's unique value. Finally, the council speaker, an ancient being whose species had witnessed the birth of stars, raised a crystalline hand for silence. Oh, Dr. Maya Chen. The speaker's voice resonated through translation implants across the chamber. Your species is young, impulsive, illogical by our standards. And yet you have done what our combined wisdom could not. You faced the unknown and emerged victorious. Not through superior technology or greater intelligence, but through something we had forgotten. Hope. The speaker paused, and Maya could swear she saw something like a smile cross its alien features. Therefore, the Council has decided. Humanity will be designated as crisis response specialists. When the impossible occurs, when logic fails, when all probability suggests defeat, we will call upon humans. Because your species possesses the galaxy's most valuable resource, the stubborn refusal to accept that some problems cannot be solved. Maya felt tears streaming down her face as the chamber erupted in a mixture of approval and concern. She thought of every time someone had told humanity they weren't ready, weren't smart enough, weren't logical enough. And she thought of this moment, proof that sometimes the most illogical choice was simply to never give up. Later, as she and her crew celebrated in Harmony's Edge's observation deck, Velcrin clicked his mandibles in what Maya now recognized as his version of laughter. You know what the truly terrifying thing is, Dr. Chen? What's that, Commander? You humans are still just beginning. Imagine what chaos you'll create in another 1,000 years. Maya grinned, raising her glass to the stars beyond the viewport. Commander, that's not chaos. That's hope. And it's humanity's gift to the galaxy. Outside, the universe stretched infinite and full of mysteries. And somewhere out there, the next impossible challenge was waiting to be solved by beings crazy enough to try. Asterisk.